Does the thought of speaking to someone in a foreign language make you sweat, but not like Snoop Dogg in his song? Or does it give you sleepless nights? Do you revise or translate the same sentences over and over again in your head before saying them? And when you finally want to say something, everything is like a big pile of illogical sentences or a stream of words which actually do not make sense together? Or maybe you block yourself and do not say anything at all. Why does it happen? It shouldn't, since you know how to create logical sentences and you have plenty of vocab up your sleeve. But when it comes to speaking, you somehow stop. You block yourself. You end up being disappointed with yourself. You feel there is an invisible barrier, a kind of an obstacle that you cannot overcome. So, if you have experiences of feeling a language barrier, you are afraid of speaking and communicating with foreigners, and you are not satisfied with the level of your speaking skills and fluency, stay with me. Once you've listened to this podcast, you'll be given a boost of confidence in speaking and the knowledge where all of these factors, like the fears and blockades, come from. As always, it's Kasia speaking to you. So at first, let's have a look at the factors that may cause the blockade in speaking. We start with the education system and what it does to our self-confidence and which skills we may develop while learning the language at school. So when it comes to the Polish system, sadly, we do not practice speaking a lot since the curriculum is designed the way it is. Basically, you focus on doing exercises in the book, either on grammar or vocab, and practice some reading and listening. You are trained how to score points and answer correctly according to the key. There's not so much time for speaking practice. There is a bit more before the final exams because you have to take the oral examination. However, if I summed up the hours spent of speaking, I can bet it would be the smallest number comparing to other skills we develop at school. Next factor, fear of being judged. As little kids, we don't have any problems with speaking, do we? We are open and want to express ourselves in our mother tongue. If we grow up in a positive, non-violent environment, of course. So let's hope and assume we are brought up happily and have a fantastic or bearable childhood. So at home, everyone respects us and lets us express ourselves. Theoretically, having grown up in such an environment, we shouldn't form any invisible barriers that would prevent us from speaking. But then school starts. And school system might be the first factor contributing to the blockade we may start developing later on. School systems have a very crucial factor in common. They assess, they judge, they grade. And being under pressure, feeling you're constantly being assessed and feeling the pressure you must be the best and have good grades and test results may lead to a later language barrier. Why so? You know how to say everything in a correct way because this is what matters during an exam. Being communicative and able to survive in a foreign language environment, even if you make mistakes, does not matter so much at school. Only grades matter, and scoring 100% correct answers matters. So you focus on being 100% correct and treat any tiny mistake as something terrible. Plus, you get stressed because you are assessed. So later on, even in adult life, you have this tendency to say nothing for fear of making mistakes. As if it was the end of the world. But it is not. You can still be understood, and you can still communicate even if you make mistakes. And you know it, but somehow you cannot get rid of that stupid feeling of fear. And unfortunately, we are not judged only at school. We have to face people's judgment everywhere else in our childhood, during teenage years, and when we are adults. And not only does it concern language skills, but also appearance, performance at work, or decisions we are making. So basically, living in our society may expose you to a constant judgment and assessment. It is what it is. That's life. Let's hope you'll be resistant to it. And of course, it doesn't need to be an excuse for giving up speaking in a foreign language. Being aware of one of the factors contributing to a language barrier is half success. So now you know the fear of being judged may cause the language barrier you have. What should you do? Be understanding of yourself. Allow yourself to make mistakes. As long as you're communicative and understood, and you can survive in a foreign country, and you are not required to make important public speeches or negotiate contracts in your company, or take exams. Making mistakes is not the end of the world. And if somebody not qualified, let's say a random person, an acquaintance, dares to point out your mistakes or correct you while speaking without good intentions, or forms an opinion of you based on your language knowledge, don't bother to talk with such a person and have hopes you won't meet them anytime soon. But honestly, I believe such fears of talking with somebody who would dare to point out your mistake in a rude way is just a fear that will never come to fruition. I genuinely believe in people and their good nature, and I'm convinced, 100%, there is a very tiny probability you'll come across such a stupid person on your way. So, believing in people, having an attitude who cares about my mistakes or fuck what others think will definitely help you overcome the barrier. And I know some of you may already have some unpleasant experiences with being judged, either at school or in a different environment. As a teacher, I listen to a lot of different stories from my students. And either the teachers were behaving and commenting on their skills in a way that is beyond my mind and is totally non-educational and brings no good, or there were some comments that teachers should never say because saying such things proves there's something wrong with them, not with the student. Also, what I've observed among some of my students is an urge to correct their classmates, which is totally not cool. Fortunately, it doesn't happen so often. I experienced it in my class just a few times. However, it was enough to remember it and mention it here. It is so uncool to correct your classmate. Remember, there is a teacher in the class who has the right and qualifications to correct their students. And if the teacher decides not to correct somebody, they have a reason for doing it. And they know why it is better not to correct somebody at this particular moment. Correcting is okay when it brings some value or is done in the atmosphere of cooperation, when you, for example, work in groups or pairs and help each other. Comments and feedback must be constructive and not done just because you felt the urge to interrupt somebody while they were speaking or dared to correct their pronunciation while they're reading. I say it again, it is totally uncool, and please focus on yourself and focus on developing your skills. If you notice somebody making a mistake, point for you, but keep it to yourself. Have that in mind because such behavior may cause stress and language barrier among your classmates. Those who have already been corrected in an uncool way by their classmates, screw what they say, listen to your teacher, don't compare yourself to anyone, but just yourself from previous weeks, months, years, etc. And next factor, which is kind of a result of wanting to be correct, is perfectionism. So perfectionism might be, let's say, an aftermath of the school years, or you can be this way and you are a perfectionist in other fields of life as well. And that's okay, but don't let it ruin your self-confidence in speaking or block you. So if you feel everything you say needs to be perfect, 100% correct, with wide range of vocab and grammar structures, I totally feel ya, and I will share my experience a bit. At some point, I developed a kind of perfectionism. It was in high school and at the beginning of my studies, my English studies. So I developed this kind of a perfectionism, which didn't allow me to speak fluently. It was either I'll score 100% correct answers, be 100% correct in speaking, and probably prove something to myself, or I am not good enough. And such an attitude caused a lot of stress, which didn't allow me to speak freely and with ease. The result was the opposite of what I wanted to achieve, because I focused too much on correctness and accuracy. And once I got rid of this attitude, I allowed myself to make mistakes and became more easygoing, and I didn't care so much about the mistakes. It turned out that I am super fluent. I speak without mistakes and have plenty of great vocab up my sleeve, which I can use with ease even during exams. So allow yourself to not be perfect and start noticing the difference. Another crucial factor which may block you is having too high expectations. It's cool you are ambitious and you want to speak, and I much appreciate it when I see my students willing to learn more and more. But remember, Rome wasn't built in one day, and there is no point in throwing yourself in at the deep end. Being communicative takes some time, and being fluent takes even more. You won't be fluent or proficient after few months. Language learning is a process, and you have to learn everything step by step to be either communicative or fluent, so don't expect from yourself too much. Set realistic goals. Be satisfied that you are able to say the things that are demanded at the level you are learning. And always think back and compare your skills now to the skills from 6 months before. Having high standards and expectations is cool as long as it is motivating, not frustrating. So when you have a bigger picture of what can cause the barrier, let's see what you can do to overcome it. Apart from screwing perfectionism and what some random people may think about your language skills, and trying to be more patient and understanding, the answer is easy. Look for opportunities to speak. It's like with any other muscle in your body. You must devote your workout to the weakest muscles to strengthen them. So talk to yourself in your mind or to the mirror. Talk to your plants, pets, family members, friends. The more you speak to yourself, the more accustomed to speaking in a foreign language you become. The more you speak to someone you know, the easier it will be to start speaking with a stranger in different life situations. Listen to your favorite English podcasts or songs. Watch some fragments of your favorite movies and repeat the lines the actors say out loud. Ask yourself random questions and answer them either in your mind or out loud. Find some websites where you can find a studying buddy who is a native speaker and you can teach each other your mother tongues. Expose yourself to a foreign language environment and enroll yourself on conversation classes. And when is the right time to start conversation classes? Conversation classes meaning you talk either 60 or 90 minutes and you don't use any books and you don't do any exercises on grammar, vocab, listening or reading during the class. You practice those skills while speaking. Conversation is one of the best ways to refresh vocab and grammar structures and expand your vocab and use all of it in a correct context and turn your passive knowledge into an active usage. So to attend such classes, I recommend being at least at level B1+, so the intermediate level, or even a best case scenario, B2, so the upper intermediate level. These levels allow you to freely express your ideas and opinions using a variety of tenses. Being at these levels doesn't need to study grammar with a book to be communicative, as it is with lower levels. Because at B1+ or B2, you already are communicative, so you can practice fluency and flow, build your self-confidence in speaking, use grammar in context, and expand your vocab. If you are at B1 level, conversation classes may appear to be too challenging for you since you are still building your communicative and survival level. However, learning at this level, so B1, also gives you opportunities to speak since you are supposed to practice real-life situations in English, such as a job interview, or dialogues at hospital or at the travel agency. Even if you work with a course book, you still should have an opportunity to speak during the class, but it's usually just a part of the class. And I strongly advise working with a book at this level since you have to build solid fundamentals of grammar and vocab to smoothly get into levels B1+ and B2 to finally start attending conversation classes. If you start the adventure with English, so you're at A1 or A2 level, you have to learn each component, so grammar, vocab, reading, listening, and start practicing easy dialogues. By doing it, you'll build the very first fundamentals and it will be easier for you to get to the next levels. It's not time for conversation classes yet. You will probably feel lost if you attend it too early, but you should have a speaking practice at this level anyway by practicing easy dialogues in real-life situations, such as ordering food at the restaurant or asking for directions or inviting your friends to your party. And before we finish, let's make it clear what is not a barrier. From time to time, my students complain they have a language barrier when actually they do not. So if you are at A1 or A2 level and you don't speak fluently, it's not a barrier. You are learning to speak at this point, so don't set too high standards at this point. The fact you cannot say something in a foreign language yet is not a barrier. You are yet to learn it. So don't assume at the beginning of your adventure with a foreign language that you will have difficulties with speaking, and don't put the invisible wall in front of you even before you start learning. When you are at higher levels, it is very common that we forget words while we're using the language. Who doesn't? Even when we speak our mother tongue, we tend to forget words. So the fact that you forget words or you are missing some vocab doesn't mean you have a language barrier. Or when you go for easier vocab you have known for years and fail to use a fancier, more advanced one, is not a blockade. It is better to say something in an easier way and convey the message than stop speaking and block yourself because you didn't use a fancy structure or word or like other fancy thing, like a metaphor or an idiomatic expression. Let's hope the next time you will success and use the more advanced one. The fact that you have to translate a sentence in your mind before you utter it doesn't mean you have a language barrier. It is very normal when you learn the language. The more you surround yourself with English, the more you listen and speak, the easier it will become to switch your mind and thoughts to a foreign language and stop translating. So all these situations I mentioned do not mean you have a language barrier. But if you decide not to speak at all because of them, at some point they may lead to the blockade. So I guess we can call it a day at this point. Remember, you learn the language to use it in practice, so the sooner you start speaking, the better. Have fun with the language, train the tongue as any other muscle, and may the confidence be with you. It was Kasia speaking to you. Till next time, bye-bye.